The ship landed on the station with a soft hum, and Emma Park took her first step into the Galactic Academy of Interstellar Sciences. She was 23 years old, and she was the first human to attend this school in over 300 years. The corridors were huge and made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Everything was built for beings much larger than her, and she felt like a child walking through a giant's house. Her boots made clicking sounds on the floor, and every alien she passed turned to look at her. Some of them had never seen a human before. Most of them thought humans were just stories or legends from old wars that happened long before anyone could remember. Now here she was walking among them, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Emma carried a single bag over her shoulder. It contained everything she owned: a few clothes, some books, a tablet, and a small picture of her family back on Earth. She missed them already, but she had worked too hard to get here, to feel sorry for herself. The Academy had sent her a welcome message that explained where to go and what to do. She followed the directions through winding hallways and past strange rooms filled with equipment she did not recognize. Finally, she reached the dormitory section and found her assigned room. It was small but clean. The bed was too big for her, and the desk was set at an awkward height, but she would manage. She always did. The next morning, Emma reported to her assigned laboratory cohort. She would be studying advanced xenobiology with 11 other students from different worlds across the galaxy. When she walked into the room, everyone stopped talking and stared at her. There were 4 Valori students, with their translucent skin that changed colors based on their emotions. There were 3 Threnic students with hard shells and compound eyes that seemed to look in every direction at once. And there were 4 Opalians with smooth gray skin and gill slits on their necks that fluttered when they braved. Emma smiled and waved hello. No one waved back. She found an empty seat at one of the lab tables and sat down. Student next to her was a Valori male whose skin immediately turned pale lavender when she got close. She would later learn that this color meant anxiety or fear. His name was Quillen, and he had been assigned as her lab partner for the semester. Professor Venn entered the room a few minutes later. He was a Threnix with dark brown shell plates and eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. He looked at Emma for a long moment before beginning his lecture. The class was about cellular regeneration in different species. Emma found it fascinating, but she noticed that the other students kept glancing at her throughout the lesson. They whispered to each other in languages a translator could not pick up. When the class ended, Quillen finally spoke to her. "Your species," he said in a quiet voice. "The archives say you evolved on a death world." Emma shrugged. "Earth. I mean, it has its rough spots." Quillen stared at her. His skin shifted from lavender to a deeper shade of purple. A death world is a planet where everything tries to kill the inhabitants. The gravity is crushing. The atmosphere is toxic. The predators are endless. The climate is extreme. How did your kind survive? We adapted, Emma said. We got tough, we learned to fight back, we built tools and weapons and shelters, we worked together. Eventually, we made it to the top of the food chain. Quillen did not seem to understand. She could see confusion in the way his colors shifted and swirled. The other students had gathered around them, now listening to the conversation. One of the Opalians, named Fennec, stepped forward. Her gill slits fluttered rapidly. "The old archives say humans fought in the Great Wars," she said. "They say humans were terrifying. They say humans would not stop fighting even when they were dying. Is this true?" Emma thought about it. For a moment, she knew the history. Her ancestors had been part of the galactic conflicts hundreds of years ago. They had earned a reputation that still echoed through the stars. "I guess we can be pretty stubborn," Emma said, "when we believe in something. We do not give up easily." The students exchanged looks. Emma could not read their expressions, but she sensed a mixture of fear and curiosity over. The following days, Emma tried her best to fit in. She attended classes and completed her assignments and ate her meals in the common area, But she always sat alone. The other students watched her from a distance, like she was a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. Quillen was the only one who spoke to her regularly. He was nervous around her, but he was also curious. He asked her questions about Earth, and about human culture, and about what it was like to live on a death world. Emma told him about oceans and mountains and forests. She told him about cities with millions of people living together. She told him about music and art and sports. She told him about her family and her friends and the life she had left behind. Quillen listened to everything with wide eyes. His skin changed colors constantly as he processed each new piece of information. "Your world sounds beautiful," he said one day, "but also terrifying," and as both Emma agreed. That is what makes it home. 3 weeks passed, and Emma began to feel more comfortable at the academy. She learned the layout of the station and memorized the schedules and figured out which foods in the cafeteria were safe for humans to eat. She even started to recognize some of the other students by name, but she was still an outsider. She could feel it in the way people looked at her. She could hear it in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. She was human, and that meant something to these aliens. Something she did not fully understand. Yet one evening, Quillen found her in the library studying for an upcoming exam. He sat down across from her, and his skin turned a soft shade of green, which she had learned meant he was feeling calm. "I want to apologize," he said, "for what Emma asked. For being afraid of you," he said. "When you first arrived, I thought you would be dangerous. I thought humans were monsters from old stories. But you are not a monster. You are just a person trying to learn like the rest of us." Emma smiled. "Thank you, Quillen. That means a lot." He nodded. His skin shifted to a warm orange color. "I think the others will come around eventually. They just need time to see what I see." "What do you see?" Emma asked. Quillen thought for a moment before answering. "I see someone who is far from home. Someone who is alone in a strange place. Someone who keeps going even when things are hard." He paused. "Maybe that is what makes humans so frightening. Not that you are violent or cruel, but that you simply refuse to give up." No matter what, Emma did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as frightening. She was just Emma, a girl from Earth who wanted to learn about the universe. But as she looked at Quillen and saw the respect in his shifting colors, she realized that maybe being human meant something more than she had ever understood. Maybe it meant being the kind of person who kept going when everyone else stopped. Maybe it meant being stubborn enough to survive anything. And maybe, just maybe, that was something to be proud of. The laboratory was quiet that morning as the students prepared for their most important experiment of the semester. Professor Venn had spent weeks teaching them about reactive minerals, and today they would finally get to work with real samples. Emma arrived early and took her place at the workstation. She shared with Quillen. He was already there, arranging tools and checking equipment. His skin was a nervous shade of yellow, which meant he was excited, but also worried. "These minerals are rare," he told Emma. "They come from a planet called Vethros 9. The atmosphere there is so toxic that only machines can collect them." Emma nodded and looked at the samples in their containment fields. They were beautiful crystals that glowed with an inner light. Some were red and some were blue, and some were a deep purple that seemed to shift when you looked at it from different angles. The other students filed in one by one. Fennec, the Opalian, took the station behind them. Her gill slits were fluttering faster than usual. 2 Threnic students named Corvin and Bellic set up at the station across the room. Their compound eyes reflected the glow of the crystals. Professor Venn entered last. He moved to the front of the room and raised one of his clawed hands. "For attention today, you will be measuring the energy output of these crystals," he announced. "The containment fields will protect you from direct exposure, but you must be careful. These minerals can be unpredictable. Handle them with respect." Students began their work. Emma watched Quillen carefully manipulate the containment field controls. He was good at this. His long, delicate fingers moved with precision, and his skin turned a focused shade of blue. Emma was tasked with recording the data. She watched the numbers scroll across her tablet and made notes about each reading. The work was tedious, but she did not mind. She liked being part of something bigger than herself. An hour passed, and then another. The students worked in near silence, broken only by the hum of equipment and the occasional whispered conversation. Emma began to relax. She had been worried about working with dangerous materials, but everything was going smoothly. Then it happened. Quillen reached for a crystal shard at the exact moment Emma leaned forward to check a reading. Their arms collided, and Quillen bumped the containment field controls. The field flickered for just a second. In that second, the crystal shifted, and a sharp edge caught Emma's palm. The cut was deep and clean. She felt the sting immediately and looked down to see blood welling up from the wound. Red, warm human blood. It spilled onto the sterile white table. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was frozen in silence, like someone had pressed pause on reality. Then Quillen saw the blood. His skin went through a dozen colors in the span of a heartbeat. Lavender to purple to gray to white. He made a sound that Emma had never heard before, a high-pitched keening that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. He stumbled backward and knocked over his chair. His eyes were fixed on the spreading pool of red on the table. Emma, he gasped. You are behind her. Fennec began to hyperventilate. Her gill slits flapped wildly, and she clutched at her chest like she could not get enough air. The Threnix students, Corvin and Bellix, pressed themselves against the far wall. Their compound eyes were huge, and their mandibles clicked in what Emma would later learn was a distress signal. Someone screamed. She could not tell who. She is dying, one of the Valori students shouted. The human is dying. Look at all that fluid. She is losing too much. The emergency alarm began to wail. A red light flashed from the ceiling, and a mechanical voice announced that medical teams were being dispatched. Professor Venn rushed toward Emma but stopped several feet away. His shell plates were trembling, and his eyes were wide with something that looked like horror. Miss Park, he said, stay calm. Do not move. We will get you help. Your vital fluid. I have never seen so much. Emma looked at her hand. The cut was maybe 2 inches long. It was bleeding steadily, but it was not gushing. She had seen worse. She had done worse to herself a dozen times back. On Earth, this is not that bad, she said. But no one seemed to hear her. The other students were in full panic mode. Some of them had fled the room. Others were huddled in corners making sounds of distress. Quillen had collapsed into a sitting position. On the floor, his skin was completely gray, and he was rocking back and forth. The human is dying. He kept saying over and over, the human is dying. Emma realized that none of these aliens had ever seen blood before. Not like this. Not red and warm and flowing from a living body. Their species must have different kinds of circulatory systems, different fluids, different responses to injury. To them, this looked like a catastrophe, a fatal wound, a death in progress. But to Emma, it was just a cut. She stood up from her chair and walked over to the supply station on the other side of the room. Every step she took seemed to cause more panic. The students who were still in the room pressed further away from her, like she was carrying a plague. She found a clean cloth and pressed it against her palm. The bleeding slowed almost immediately. That was how it worked. You applied pressure, and you waited, and your body did the rest. Medical teams are 2 minutes away, Professor Venn announced. His voice was shaking. Miss Park, please lie down. We need to stabilize you before I am fine. Emma said. The room went quiet. Not the quiet of calm, but the quiet of shock. Everyone stared at her like she had just said something impossible. I am fine, she repeated. It is just a cut. See, she held up her hand with the cloth pressed against it. Already stopping. Just need to clean it and wrap it up. Quillen made a strangled sound. How can you be fine? You are leaking vital fluid. Your internal systems are compromised. You should be in shock. You should be dying. Fennec finished. Her voice was barely a whisper. You should be dying. Emma almost laughed, but she caught herself. She did not want to seem insensitive. These aliens were genuinely terrified. They thought they were watching her dino. She said gently, "This is not dying. This is just bleeding. Humans bleed all the time. We cut ourselves and scrape ourselves and bruise ourselves. It happens. Our bodies know how to fix it." She pulled a cloth away from her hand and showed them the wound. The bleeding had already slowed to a trickle. The edges of the cut were red and irritated, but they were not gaping open. "See," she said, "my blood is already clotting. That means it is thickening and forming a seal. In a few minutes, it will stop completely. In a few days, the wound will close. In a few weeks, there will be nothing but a small scar." The small scar. Students stared at her in disbelief. Professor Venn stepped closer. His trembling had stopped, and now he looked at her with something like fascination. "You mean to say," he said slowly, "that your species can sustain tissue damage and simply recover?" Emma nodded. "Yes, all humans can. We have been doing it for millions of years." The medical team burst through the door at that moment. 3 aliens in white uniforms carrying equipment that Emma did not recognize. They rushed toward her, and then stopped when they saw her standing calmly with a cloth pressed to her hand. "She is ambulatory," one of them said in confusion. The readings said there was significant fluid loss. There was Emma agreed, "But I am okay. Really, I just need a bandage." The medical team looked at each other. Then they looked at Professor Venn. Then they looked back at Emma. She smiled at them and hoped they could not see how strange this all felt on Earth. A cut like this would barely get a second glance. Here it had caused a full-scale emergency response. For the first time, Emma truly understood how different she was from everyone else on this station, and she was beginning to understand why the old archives called humans terrifying. The medical team insisted on taking Emma to the infirmary, even though she told them repeatedly that she was fine. They scanned her with devices she did not recognize and asked her questions she did not understand, and looked at each other with expressions of complete bewilderment. "Her vital signs are stable," one of them said. "She has lost approximately 40 milliliters of fluid, but her body is already compensating." 40 milliliters, Emma said. "That is nothing. I've lost more than that from a nosebleed." The medical officers stared at her. Their species was Valori, like Quillen, and their skin shifted through confused shades of orange and yellow. "A nosebleed," one of them repeated. "You mean to say that fluid leaks from your respiratory passages?" "Sometimes," Emma said. "If the air is dry or if you get hit in the face, it is not a big deal." The officers exchanged glances. They seemed to be having a silent conversation that Emma was not part of. Finally, one of them stepped forward with a small kit. "We will clean and bandage your wound," she said. "But we must admit that we have never treated a human before. Our medical knowledge of your species is limited to old archives." "That is okay," Emma said. "Just clean it and wrap it up. That is all I need." The officer opened the kit and began to work. She was gentle and careful, and her hands trembled slightly as she touched Emma's skin. The blood had dried to a dark red crust around the edges of the cut. "This is your clotting response?" the officer asked. "Yes," Emma said. "The blood cells stick together and form a barrier. It keeps more blood from escaping and protects the wound while it heals." "Remarkable," the officer whispered. "Our species does not have this ability. Any breach in our circulatory system requires immediate medical intervention. Without it, we would lose fluid until our organs failed." Emma had suspected something like this based on the reactions she had seen in the laboratory, but hearing it confirmed made her realize just how lucky humans were. She had always taken her body's ability to heal for granted. Now she understood that it was actually extraordinary. The officer finished cleaning the wound and applied a bandage. It was made of some kind of synthetic material that sealed to Emma's skin and formed a protective barrier. She flexed her hand experimentally and felt only a mild sting. "Thank you," Emma said. "This is perfect." The officer nodded, but she still looked shaken. "You may return to your quarters," she said, "but please report any changes in your condition. Fever Increased pain, discoloration, anything unusual, I will, Emma promised. She left the infirmary and made her way back to her dormitory. The pair in the dormitory, the someone in the mayor made back to her dormitory and made her way back to her dormitory. The corridors that had seemed so empty when she first arrived were now filled with students. All of them turned to look at her as she passed. Word had spread quickly. The human who bled and did not die. Emma heard whispers in a dozen different languages. Her translator picked up fragments of conversation. "Did you hear?" she said. "Did you see so much blood?" And she just stood there like it was nothing. She walked faster. She did not want to be a spectacle. She just wanted to get back to her room and rest. But when she turned the corner, she found Quillen waiting outside her door. His skin was still pale, but it had shifted from gray to a soft lavender. He looked like he had been crying. "If his species could cry, Emma," he said. "I am so sorry I bumped the controls. I caused your injury." "This is my fault." Emma shook her head. "It was an accident." "Quillen, you did not mean to hurt me, but I did hurt you," he said. "I saw your blood. I saw the pain on your face. For a moment, I thought you were going to die because of me." Emma reached out and touched his arm. His skin was cool and smooth under her fingers. "I'm not going to die," she said. "Humans are tougher than you think. We have been getting hurt and healing for as long as we have existed. This is just another day for us." Quillen stared at her. His skin shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. "How can you be so calm?" he asked. "Does the pain not bother you?" "Of course it bothers me," Emma said. "It hurts, but pain is not the same as danger. Pain is just information. It tells me something is wrong and I need to fix it. Does not control me." Quillen was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I am beginning to understand," he said, "why the old archives speak of humans with such fear. It is not because you are aggressive or violent. Many species are aggressive and violent. But you are something different." "What do you mean?" Emma asked. Quillen searched for the right words. His colors shifted through several shades as he thought. "When my people are injured," he said, "we panic. The pain overwhelms us and we cannot function. We need others to help us or we will die. But you get injured and you just keep going. You ask for a bandage like you are asking for a glass of water. You treat a wound that would kill one of us like it is a minor inconvenience." He paused and looked directly into her eyes. "That is what makes you terrifying," he said. "Not your strength or your speed or your weapons, but your ability to endure, to suffer and keep moving, to bleed and not stop." Emma did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as terrifying. She was just Emma, a human doing what humans do. "Maybe that is the point," Quillen said, as if reading her thoughts. "You do not even realize how extraordinary you are. To you this is normal, but to the rest of the galaxy, it is almost supernatural." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Quillen reached into his bag and pulled out a small container. "I brought you something," he said. "Food from my world. It is supposed to help with healing. I do not know if it will work for humans, but I wanted to do something." Emma took the container and smiled. "Thank you, Quillen." "This means a lot." He nodded, and his skin turned a warm shade of orange. "I should let you rest. I will see you in class tomorrow. If you are feeling well enough, I will be there," Emma said. "A cut is not going to keep me awake." Quillen made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then he turned and walked away. Emma went into her room and sat down on her bed. She looked at the bandage on her hand and thought about everything that had happened. Today, a simple accident had turned into something much bigger. It had revealed how different she was from everyone else on this station. But it had also revealed something else, something that gave her hope. Quillen had been afraid of her, but he had overcome that fear. He had waited outside her door and apologized and brought her food. He had tried to understand instead of running away. Maybe the other students would do the same. Maybe they would see past their fear and recognize her for what she really was. Not a monster from old stories, but just a person trying to find her place in the universe. Emma opened the container Quillen had given her. Inside were small round objects that smelled like honey and vanilla. She took a bite and found them surprisingly delicious. She finished the entire container and then lay back on her bed. Her hand throbbed gently, but the pain was already fading. Her body was doing what it had always done, healing, recovering, getting ready for whatever came next. That was what it meant to be human. You got knocked down and you got back up. You got hurt and you healed. You faced the impossible and you found a way through. Emma closed her eyes and let herself drift towards sleep. Tomorrow would be another day, another chance to show the galaxy what humans were made of, and she was ready for it. Word of the incident spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, everyone knew about the human who had bled in the laboratory, the human who had asked for a bandage while her classmates collapsed in terror, the human who had walked to the infirmary on her own 2 feet. Emma noticed the change immediately when she went to breakfast. The cafeteria, which had always gone quiet when she entered, now erupted in whispers. Students pointed at her and talked behind their hands. Some of them moved away when she walked past. Others leaned in closer, trying to get a better look. She got her food and found a table in the corner. The seat across from her remained empty for several minutes. Then a shadow fell over her tray. "I sit here." Emma looked up. A Threnic student stood before her. She recognized him as Corvin, one of the students who had pressed himself against the wall during the accident. His compound eyes reflected her image back at her like a dozen tiny mirrors of course, Emma said. Corvin sat down carefully. His shell plates clicked as he settled into the chair. He did not have any food. He had only come to talk. "I wanted to ask you something," he said. His voice was deep and resonant like stones grinding together. "Go ahead." Emma said. "Yesterday," he said, "when you were injured, your reaction was unlike anything I have ever seen. You did not scream. You did not collapse. You did not beg for help. You simply addressed the problem and moved forward. How is this possible?" Emma thought about how to answer. The question seemed simple, but she sensed there was something deeper behind. "I guess I have been hurt before," she said. "When you experience pain enough times, you learn that it is not the end of the world. You learn that you can survive it. You learn that your body knows what to do if you just give it time." Corvin was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "But does the fear not overwhelm you? When you see your own blood, do you not feel terror?" Emma shook her head. "I feel concern," she said. "I feel the need to address the injury. But terror would not help. Terror would make things worse. I cannot afford to be paralyzed by fear when there is a problem to solve." Corvin made a clicking sound that she had learned meant contemplation. "My people," he said, "the Threnics, we are covered in armor. Our shells protect us from most injuries. But when we are hurt, when something penetrates our defenses, the pain is catastrophic. We go into shock. We become helpless. We must rely entirely on others to save." Yuj paused, and his eyes seemed to dim. "I was hurt once when I was young." He continued. "A training accident. A blade pierced my shell and reached the soft tissue beneath. I remember the pain. I remember the terror. I remember believing with absolute certainty that I was dying. It took 3 medics and a full day of treatment to save my life. I'm sorry." Emma said. "That sounds awful." It was. Corvin agreed. "But what haunts me is not the injury itself. It is the helplessness, the complete loss of control. I could do nothing but lie there and wait for others to decide whether I lived or died." He looked at Emma with something like wonder. "But you took control. You saw the problem, and you fixed it. You did not wait for anyone to save you. You saved yourself. How do humans learn to do this?" Emma considered the question carefully. "I think it starts when we are children," she said. "We fall down and scrape our knees. We bump our heads and get bruises. We cut ourselves on sharp things. Our parents teach us that these things happen. They teach us how to clean wounds and apply bandages. They teach us that pain is temporary and that our bodies will heal." She paused, remembering her own childhood. Her mother washing dirt out of a scraped elbow. Her father putting a bandage on a cut finger. the countless small injuries that had taught her how to cope with pain by the time we are adults. Emma continued, "We have been hurt hundreds of times. We know what it feels like. We know what to expect. We know that. We will recover. So when something happens, we do not panic. We just deal with it." Corvin absorbed this information. His shell plate shifted as he processed her words. "Your species trains itself from birth," he said. "You deliberately expose your young to pain so they will learn to endure it. It is not deliberate," Emma said. "It just happens. Life on Earth is full of small dangers. Small injuries are inevitable, so we learn to handle them, but the result is the same." Corvin said, "You create adults who can face injury without losing their minds. You create warriors who can keep fighting even when they are wounded. You create survivors who refuse to give up." Emma had never thought of it that way, but she could see the truth in his words. Humans did not train for resilience on purpose, but they achieved it anyway simply by living on a world that constantly tried to hurt them later. That day, Professor Venn called Emma to his office. She walked through the corridors, wondering if she was in trouble. The accident had disrupted his class and caused a major emergency response. Maybe he was going to expel her, but when she entered his office, she found something unexpected. The professor was not angry. He was fascinated. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a chair that was far too large for her. Emma sat. Her feet dangled above the floor like a child's eye. "I've spent the last day reviewing the archives," he said. "Everything we have on human physiology and behavior. I thought I understood your species, but I was wrong. I understood almost nothing." "What did you learn?" Emma asked. Professor Venn leaned forward. His compound eyes glittered with intensity. "Your world did not just try to kill you," he said. "It succeeded countless times. Your species faced extinction. Over and over. Predators hunted you. Diseases ravaged you. Ice ages froze you. Droughts starved you. Every generation your ancestors faced threats that should have wiped them out, and yet here you are." He spread his clawed hands wide. "Not only did your species survive, you thrived. You conquered your world. You developed technology. You reached for the stars, and when you encountered other species in the Great Wars, you proved yourselves to be formidable beyond all expectation." Emma nodded. She knew this history, though she had never heard it described quite this way. "I used to think," Professor Venn continued, "that humans were dangerous because of your aggression, your willingness to fight, your capacity for violence. But now I understand the truth." The professor leaned closer. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You are dangerous because you do not know how to give up. Your bodies heal from injuries that would kill other species. Your minds recover from trauma that would break other minds. You face pain and loss and failure, and you simply keep going." He sat back and his voice returned to normal. "That is why the archives call your world a death world. Not because it was deadly to you, but because you became deadly in response. You evolved into the ultimate survivors, and now nothing in the galaxy can stop you." Emma sat in silence for a long moment. She felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had always known that humans were tough, but she had never understood how rare that toughness was, how precious, how terrifying to those who did not share it. "Do not want to be terrifying," she said finally. "I just want to learn. I just want to find my place here." Professor Venn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You cannot help what you are," he said, "but perhaps you can show the others that being human does not make you a monster. Perhaps you can teach them that your strength can be used to protect as well as destroy." Emma thought about Quillen waiting outside her door, with Food Corvin sitting across from her asking questions with genuine curiosity. Professor Venn looking at her with respect instead of fear. Maybe he was right. Maybe she could show them who she really was. Maybe she could be more than just a survivor. Maybe she could be a friend. The months that followed changed everything for Emma Park. She was no longer just a human exchange student. She was no longer just the girl who had bled in the laboratory. She had become something else entirely. She had become a legend. It started small After the incident in the laboratory, a few more students began talking to her. They asked questions about Earth and about humans and about how her body worked. Emma answered as honestly as she could. She showed them the scar on her palm where the crystal had cut her and explained how human skin regenerated itself. The students were amazed. They touched the scar gently like it was something precious, a mark of survival, a badge of honor. Then other incidents happened, and each one added to a reputation. There was the time when a chemical spill contaminated one of the lower laboratories. Toxic fumes filled the corridor, and the alarm systems failed. The students who were trapped inside panicked. They could not breathe, and they could not think, and they could not find their way to safety. Emma was passing by when she heard the screams. She did not hesitate. She pulled her shirt up over her nose and mouth and ran into the smoke. She found 3 Opalian students huddled in a corner, choking on the fumes. She grabbed them one by one and dragged them to safety. By the time the emergency crews arrived, she had saved all 3. The fumes had burned her throat and irritated her eyes, but she was alive. The students she saved were alive. That was all that mattered. The next day, everyone knew what she had done. "How did you breathe in there?" Fennec asked her later. Her gill slits were still swollen from the exposure, but she had made a full recovery. "I held my breath mostly," Emma said, "and when I had to breathe, I filtered the air through cloth. It was not perfect, but it was enough. You could have died." Fennec said, "So could you?" Emma replied, "and you could not save yourself. So I had to do it." Fennec stared at her for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and took Emma's hand. "Thank you," she said. "I will not forget this." There was the time when a fire broke out in the engineering wing. An experiment had gone wrong, and flames were spreading through the ventilation system. The other students evacuated in terror, but Emma grabbed an extinguisher and ran toward the fire. She fought the flames for almost 10 minutes before the suppression systems finally kicked in. By then she had contained the blaze and prevented it from reaching the fuel storage tanks. Her arms were covered in burns, but the station was safe. The medical team treated her injuries with a combination of wonder and disbelief. Her burns healed in less than a week. The other students would have needed months of treatment or permanent replacement of damaged tissue. "How do you keep doing this?" Quillen asked her one evening. They were sitting in the common room, watching the stars drift past the viewport. His skin was a calm shade of blue. He had stopped being afraid of her a long time ago, doing what Emma asked, running toward danger. He said, "Everyone else runs away, but you always run toward it." Emma thought about the question. She did not have a simple answer. "I guess I cannot stand to watch people suffer," she said finally. "When I see someone in trouble, I do not think about the risk to myself. I just think about helping them. My body moves before my mind can catch up. That is what makes you human." Quillen said, "I understand that now. It is not just your healing or your endurance or your tolerance for pain. It is your instinct to protect others, even at cost to yourself." He turned to look at her directly. His skin shifted to a warm shade of orange. "The old archives were wrong about your species," he said. "They said humans were dangerous conquerors who spread across the galaxy by force. But I do not think that tells the whole story." "What do you think the story is?" Emma asked. "I think," Quillen said, "that humans are protectors. You evolved on a death world where everything wanted to kill you. And instead of becoming selfish, you became the opposite. You learned to take care of each other. You learned to sacrifice for the group. You learned that survival is not just about the individual, but about everyone." He paused, and his colors deepened. "That is why you are here, is it not? You did not come to the academy to prove that humans are superior. You came to learn, to understand, to connect. You want to be part of something bigger than yourself." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly why I came." The semester ended, and Emma had to make a decision. She could return to Earth and resume her normal life, or she could stay at the academy and continue her studies. The choice was not difficult. She had found something here that she had never expected. She had found friends Quillen and Fennec and Corvin and dozens of others who had overcome their fear and learned to see her as a person. She had found purpose. She had saved lives and helped others and made a difference. She had found home on the last day of the semester. Professor Venn called a special assembly. All the students and faculty gathered in the great hall to hear his announcement. This year, he said, we welcomed a human to our academy, the first in 300 years. Many of us were afraid. We did not know what to expect. We had only stories and legends to guide you. Looked at Emma standing in the crowd, surrounded by her friends, but Emma Park showed us something different. She showed us that humans are not monsters. They are survivors. They are healers. They are protectors. They face pain and fear and danger, and they do not stop. They keep going no matter what. He raised one clawed. Handy, am pleased to announce that Emma has been offered a permanent position at the academy. She will continue her studies, and she will serve as a liaison between humans and the foe galactic community. She will help us understand her species, and she will help her species understand us. The crowd erupted in applause. Quillen grabbed Emma's hand and squeezed. Fennec cheered so loud her gill slits fluttered. Corvin clicked his shell plates in approval. Emma looked around at all the faces that had once watched her with fear and suspicion. Now they watched her with respect and affection and hope. She thought about everything she had been through. The accident in the laboratory, the chemical spill, the fire, the countless small moments when she had chosen to act instead of hesitate. She thought about her body covered in scars that had healed. She thought about her heart full of connections she had never expected to make. This was what it meant to be human, not just surviving but thriving, not just enduring but growing, not just protecting yourself but protecting others. She stepped forward and addressed the crowd. Thank you, she said. I came here alone and afraid. I did not know if I would be accepted. I did not know if I would belong. But you gave me a chance. You let me prove myself, and now I am honored to call this place my home. She looked out at the stars visible through the great windows. The universe is vast and dangerous, she continued. There are threats we cannot imagine and challenges we cannot foresee. But if we face them together, if we combine our strengths and support each other, then nothing can stop us. She smiled and felt the warmth of her friends standing beside her. Humans learned that lesson a long time ago on a death world where everything wanted to kill us. We learned that together we could survive anything. Now I want to share that lesson with all of you. She raised her hand, the one with the scar from the crystal that had changed everything. We are all survivors, she said, and as long as we stand together, we always will be. The crowd cheered again, louder than before. And Emma Park, the human who had asked for a bandage while aliens froze in terror, knew that she had finally found her place in the universe, not as a legend or a monster or a curiosity, but as a friend, and that was more than enough.